To think that if Pixar is able to develop a fourth Toy Story film extending the mythos beyond the already complete trilogy of one of the best, most endearing and memories-inducing movie franchises, all the more so being animated of all time alone, is one steep undertaking itself. And indeed, this fourth installment feels out of place that really makes audience doubtful of its existence when it's first rumored in 2014 that the then studio head of Pixar, John Lasseter and gang, were going to make a fourth movie about a love story, and Lasseter himself was going to direct it in this era of Hollywood which prefers making sequels rather than originals. The Toy Story series has been vital in laying down the foundation of Pixar until this day. The first one being the first full computer animated feature film from Pixar, the second being the first ever sequel produced by Pixar, and the third one being the second Pixar film ever to be nominated for Oscar Best Picture. And these are just some of the groundbreaking benchmarks and records that they have set for the studio known for making heartfelt, deep, and gorgeous animations. Pixar changed Hollywood. So you might think that Pixar can do no wrong, but nonetheless, the studio still has some stinkers under its belt, and to say that the brand Toy Story will ever be in that category would be the last thing in any sane person's mind. Let's just be straight. Toy Story 4 can be downright a disappointment, especially if you have seen the first 3 movies. If so, you will probably be an adult now, as most of us who followed the series unrelentingly and passionately were children and preteens when the first 2 was released, and the third one when we were going to college or university. Thus, the immense relevance and relatability the movies have with us growing up. When Pixar always says that its movies are for both children and adults alike, this is the case where the children outgrew the series and the Toy Story that we knew of had to evolve and to a certain extent cater to the upcoming generations. And frankly, so are the people behind the movie who are mostly replaced with upcoming talents. This story of the latest flick in this franchise has been written several times by several people, a whopping 8. The Mermaid has 8 screenwriters as well. The whole series has been around from 25 years now since the inception of the first one back in 1995, and every installment basically had a heavy theme that made each of them so memorable and distinct that the cumulative story makes sense and a cycle is drawn so vividly through thorough characters development and consistent world building. It has been a treat and wonder to see from how Buzz realized that he is a toy, Woody's roots to the cruel fact that your owner has to grow up one day and what happens after. These are all brilliantly tied into a common plot point that is the unfaltering loyalty to your kid, which has been the core value of Woody throughout the series. Never a second do we feel that these characters are toys, and that is how successful Pixar is in telling a story of the masterclass.
Open your eyes, Woody. There's plenty of kids out there. It can't be just about the one you're still clinging to.
It's called loyalty. Something a lost toy wouldn't understand.
Toy Story 4 in a nutshell is to Finding Dory as the original trilogy is to Finding Nemo. Wildly unnecessary at times and deviating from the original vision, albeit funny and heartwarming occasionally. Ironically, Andrew Stanton, who is one of the writers of these 2 movies, plays a huge part in them. There are so much inconsistencies and frantic pacing beyond the incomparable first act of the film. It's as if heavy themes, finding your purpose from an existential crisis, embracing your destiny, accepting your mortality and romance are being thrown in there in the blender, and the producers just kind of wish that something would come out from that mess that can jive the audience into thinking that this is another layered attempt from the masterminds at Pixar. These are mature themes, no doubt, And for the first time in a long time, Pixar seems to fail in executing them and do justice to the characters' extended lores, and instead replace clever and room-reading screenplay with nimble and colorful storytelling. To be fair, Finding Dory has the similar problem as well. The plot is overstuffed with characters. Sadly, one of them is Keanu Reeves' character, that you either don't care for or not develop enough to be intriguing. There's a little bit of miscast over here, or people just thought that they can include Keanu in everything and it would be spectacular and gain popularity easily. It overshadows our favorite original toy gang immensely. Rest in peace Jim Varney as Slinky Dog and Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head. Nevertheless, Key and Peele stole the show in every scene that they are in, and are great additions to the franchise with their off-brand comedy style and unsettling chemistry on screen.
How you like that, cheetah? Huh? Wow! Yeah! oh, to infinity and my foot! Boom! In a galaxy far, far away, you got kicked in the head!
On the other hand, there isn't a compelling villain this time around, and the whole carnival setting is as if they copy the idea from Finding Dory, which mostly takes place in an aquatic park. Andrew Stanton again, sigh. Sometimes you would just wish that the writers would either focus on the story of Forky in his self-discovery journey to become a toy, or the exploration of the romance between Woody and Bo Peep, rather than forcing all of them into one cohesive, engaging story. It simply takes the emotionality out of the audience by the time the end of the movie unfolds. In the end, my inner voice says that we don't deserve this sequel, and Toy Story 3 could have been the perfect closure to a phenomenal franchise. For some, Toy Story 4 will ultimately feel like an inevitable cash grab that it was presumed to be in the beginning, and for another, it will continue to break the barrier of visual spectacle and gut-busting humor. Nevertheless, we finally got the send-off that Woody deserves, I guess, according to the makers. A divisive send-off to one of the most beloved characters in cinema history, a vintage cowboy doll. Toy Story has taught me not to be too fixated on my expectations, and that sometimes things just don't go our expected ways, and ain't that the beauty of life? Tom Hanks has claimed that this will be the final film in the series, but I wouldn't mind if they decide to come back to the franchise or even continue the story with another group of toys somewhere else. Though the new chief in town, Pete Docter, has said that it's all original films after this one right now. Guess we will just have to wait and see.